Canon start, third POV, in the end, she couldn't go through with it. After all that effort, a single glacé at him evaporated all the courage she had built up for months. He was preparing a rejection, she realized halfway into her confession. She hated that he was a blank sheet and any emotion that was strong enough to surface on his face was so obvious to read. And what did she do? She never confessed. You could not reject someone when they didn't even confess. But why would she do that? Why would she continue pursuing a heart that was ready to reject her? That was a foolish decision, she was smarter than that. Well, she didn't know either. Just ask her heart why it loved him. She was just a victim of her heart like many girls were. During the past 2 months, she came to learn about his engagement in a little more detail. You wouldn't be able to imagine how heavy her heart was when she learned that not only did Seiji like this fiancé, but he was more than okay with the engagement. Maybe she should have given up then. Instead of acting like a bitch that tried to seduce an engaged man, instead of trying to steal a heart that was already owned. But a voice in her heart said, a little more. A little more effort. A little more time. A little more love. After a little more, she would finally confess her feelings even if her reward would be rejection. Then she would let the world move on. Personally, she might never move on, but at least she would let him go then. She knew the danger her job presented, people die all the time while doing missions. So if she were ever to face such an end, she wanted to go out without regret. And she wanted to squeeze everything out of her life. Hey, I thought they would die, but look who is alive and swimming, Seiji said while crouching beside the pond of the flower mansion. He was looking at the goldfish they had caught last night like a small excited child. Kane looked at the goldfish swimming around in their new home with sad eyes. A little more, a voice in her heart sounded again. I want a little more of his scent. I want a little more of his touch, I want a little more of his love. For a woman who spent all her life helping people and giving without asking for anything in return, it was okay if she was a little greedy this time, right? She couldn't have the whole thing but... Please. Just a little more. Wah! Asterisk splash. Asterisk Seiji fell into the small pond because he was trying to follow a certain goldfish swimming in the pond. Actually, the strongest Hashira would never slip like that and make a mistake. But Kane realized that she must have looked sad while she was deep in thought. He was doing that silly thing to cheer her up and distract her from the sorrow of her own thoughts. Honestly, he was so obvious when you knew him well. That was one of her favorite things about him. He was so obvious even though he believed that he was clever. His eyes never missed anything, but the eyes of a woman in love didn't either. To reward his effort, she allowed herself to release a peal of giggles. She was not actually laughing at his wet self but at his cute attempt to cheer her. And he just sat there, half his body submerged and stared at her smile. A little more Seiji. Let's play dumb for a little more. Seiji's POV, a week after the festival date, enough of this sad and K-drama bullshit. Look at this cool shit instead. Storm breathing, second form, could you imagine how fucked the demon in front of me was? He was probably as weak as Tanjiro's first demon whom he killed with an axe too. Talk about going overboard. But I had absolutely zero remorse for the battle-looking demon. I was racist like that. It was his karma that he met Seiji, the steroid Hashira professional hater racist too deaf to hear you beg, Shirgan. There was absolutely no sound while I dashed past the demon. Only when the technique was done and I had obliterated my opponent did sound gather up the courage to scream. Asterisk boom. Asterisk lightning wave, I said out loud while standing still in my place due to fatigue. I admit it was a little goofy that I became a statue whenever I used storm breathing, but I was spamming it exactly for that reason. After using it enough, my body would grow stronger and adapt to my strength. There was no one to disturb me because I made sure there were no threats before pulling off this move. After a few seconds, my body came out of its locked state and I breathed a sigh of relief. Then Raven flew down from the tree and landed on my head. Thank you for looking out for me, I said with a smile. She was in charge of protecting me while I was in my vulnerable state after using storm breathing. How would she protect me, you ask? Well, her job is to fly in front of the enemy and present herself as a quick snack before they attack me. OW. Raven pecked me on my head and it hurt like you wouldn't believe. Alright, I was joking, I said, you are the main course meal before they attack. Ow ow ow. OW. And she bestows my joke with multiple pecks on the head. I swear a lower demon could die from this thing. Just then, a Kasugai crow appeared overhead and delivered a message. That put a stop to my punishment of Dao pecks, so I sighed in relief. Seiji sure gone. Seiji sure gone. You are called for an emergency Hashira meeting. You are called for an emergency Hashira meeting. Well, that didn't sound good at all. It had only been a few days since we last had the Hashira meeting. But now an emergency meeting was called. I hope nothing bad has happened and it was only just about to happen. Because I would rather take an incoming disaster than a disaster that already struck. When I reached the Demon Slayer Corp headquarters, everyone had already gathered. I was the furthest away and also the last one to be informed because of my speed. I was pleasantly surprised when I reached the meeting ground though. There was someone extra today, someone who was not a Hashira yet. Rengoku, the name spilled out of my mouth and everyone turned to look at me. Ah, Seiji, Ubuyashiki gave me a gentle smile, you're finally here, we've been waiting for you. I went to my fellow Hashira and stood beside them. Rengoku was on his knee a few meters away from us. I posed a question. What's going on? We will get to that in a minute, my boy, Ubuyashiki replied, with the pillar of pillars here, let us finally start the emergency Hashira meeting. After that, a pregnant silence fell over the headquarters. We have discovered many bombs planted in Tokyo and it is also highly possible that one of the 12 Kazuki is in the city. Oh, that sounded bad. Wait, this feels familiar. I racked my brain for a few seconds before the answer finally came to mind. My suspicion was correct, I have read this before. It was the start of Rengoku's manga. I smiled, I guess it was finally time for my friend to cross the threshold and become a Hashira. Be careful, Seiji's POV, the sun was sailing towards the middle of the sky, it was late in the morning. Under the heat of the sun, a gentle breeze would frequently blow at us, giving us respite. The smell of flowers lingered in the wind, summer was when most flowers bloomed. The headquarters was also full of greens and flowers that gave the scene a natural beauty. All the Hashiras stood in front of the house while Ubuyashiki sat on the veranda and informed us of the main reason why we had gathered. To summarize, there was a high possibility that one of the 12 Kazuki was in Tokyo and from the planted bombs people had discovered, the police actually, it seemed the demon was planning something devious. Like they always did, that's why I would drive them to extinction. Anyways, he also told us that Rengoku was stepping up in place of his father Shinjuro. The Flame Pillar would rarely attend Hashira meetings or take missions, and his behavior was no longer acceptable. Which was why Rengoku had stepped up in his father's place. Ubuyashiki declared that Shinjuro was finally removed from the pillars. Shinjuro had retired, or more like he was fired. And the seat of the Flame Hashira was open for the taking. Unlike what happened in the manga, Sanemi did not start a fight with Rengoku because they had met before through me. And even if they hadn't met before, Sanemi would not bully him knowing that Rengoku was my friend. We followed everything Ubuyashiki was saying until he said. Which is why I decided to give the mission to Rengoku. It will be a chance for him to prove whether he is worthy of becoming a Hashira, that left every Hashira speechless, except me of course. They were wondering if their master had gone crazy. The mission of slaying one of the 12 Kazuki was hard enough, but it was said that he planted bombs all around Tokyo and was planning something. The mission involved many risks and put the lives of the civilians at risk. These types of missions would only be handed to the top Hashiras like Jyomiai, me or Tengen. But Ubuyashiki wanted to give the mission to Rengoku. Someone who was not even a Hashira. It was insanity. What? But master, what if he is incapable of completing the mission? Sanemi yelled out everyone's thoughts. I understand your concern, Sanemi, and if he failed, it would be a great misjudgment on my part, Aoyashiki said, shutting down all other arguments by taking the responsibility. No one, except me, trusted Rengoku to complete the mission, but they trusted Aoyashiki with all their heart. So you believe that he is already at the level of a Hashira? Or is it an intuition master? Gyomii asked seriously. Indeed, Rengoku is already at the level of a Hashira. This will merely be a confirmation, he answered with a soft nod. Then I trust your decision. Meanwhile, Rengoku was looking at Aoyashiki like an idol. I could almost read his mind. It would go something like, oh my god, he trusts me with all his heart even when everyone is doubting me. I can't fail him. Then that would add to his shounen protagonist aura and his plot armor would thicken. Besides, I can't have anyone leave their patrolling territory. Tokyo had always been under the protection of the Flame Hashira, so Rengoku will be fulfilling his duty, Aoyashiki said. I swear I will not fail you, Lord Aoyashiki. Rengoku said and bowed gratefully. That dictated the end of the meeting and everyone dispersed with varying degrees of emotions about the whole thing. I, however, remained in my place and after everyone left, I went near Aoyashiki. Do you have anything to ask, Seiji? I was just wondering what made you so confident that Rengoku can pull this off, I said. I was honestly trying to verify if he really had the ability of foresight or not. My eyes could see the truth of the world. And I knew that when he said that it would be fine if Rengoku took the mission, there was no hint of doubt in his mind. He truly believed that. Someone could say the sun will rise tomorrow and even that would be less confident. Aoyashiki was either absolutely insane or he was hiding something big. Oh, and you want to know why? He asked and I nodded. You should know the answer to that, right? He said again and I froze. Yes, I knew that Rengoku would pull this off too. But I knew it because I read the manga in my past life. My eyes widen. Don't tell me that all this time, he is also a. You are going to be there after all, he said, and that put my crazy mind at a standstill. I opened my mouth but no words came out. Indeed, I was going to be there in Tokyo because no matter how clearly I remembered the manga, there was a chance that Rengoku could die due to the butterfly effect. So I would definitely be there to make sure he was safe. And most importantly, I had to make sure that Mitsuri was safe because she was going to fight there too and finally invent the love breathing. That's how I know that everything will be fine, he said. I see, so he was not a reincarnation but he was just extremely smart. It would be an insane plot twist though, if he was also a reincarnator. A plot twist many people would not appreciate, I'm sure. I see. Thank you, I said, and I finally left the headquarters. After I left the compound, I ran behind Rengoku to wish him luck on his mission. I was not good at giving motivational speeches but I said I believed in him. At least, that should add to the length of his flashback that every shounen protagonist had, making him a little stronger. One day later, I stood atop the highest building in Tokyo, which was a tower. I looked down at the city and my purple eyes released a smoky glow as I scanned the entire visible part of the city. And that makes it 74, I said and finally stopped focusing on my eyes too much, it was quite taxing. There were 74 bombs planted all around Tokyo and I had located them all in just a few minutes. I was the most efficient demon slayer for a reason. Whatever tricks the demons had, I could see through them all. My gaze traveled to the center of the city where Rengoku was, surrounded by a couple dozen other demon slayers whom he was leading. One of them was my cute and bubbly Mitsuri. From the looks of it, they were discussing their plan. Okay, I'll have you move in groups of 2, as planned. If you find the demon, call me by crow and prioritize evacuation and the safety of the citizens. I read Rengoku's lips from afar, and then I stopped. I turned my head to the left and looked at the building a few hundred feet away from them. On top of the roof was a demon wearing Western-styled sleek black jacket and pants with a sailor captain hat. He was holding a rifle, aiming carefully at Rengoku and his team. My eyes glowed purple as I tracked the direction his rifle was aiming at. He was aiming right at Mitsuri. I was planning on not interfering and letting Rengoku and the rest have their moment to shine and grow, but not at the risk of their safety. It seemed I had to do something. Thunder wind breathing, the fastest breathing styles in the world combined to create something even faster. I easily traveled faster than the speed of sound for a moment, so there was no sound that foretold my approach. The demon aimed his rifle carefully for a few more seconds before he pulled the trigger. But I had timed my appearance perfectly, so when he took the shot, I put my feet on the rifle and pushed it away slightly. The literal centimeter disruption at the aim caused the bullet to miss Mitsuri. Shoot. The demon was startled. But he did not make a move. It knew instinctively that I could end him on my whims. Nothing he did would matter. Be careful, you nearly hit someone important, I said, and he trembled slightly. My feet remained on his rifle, but he made no attempt to move it away. I stared at him for a long time, debating on what I should do next. You are lucky that you have use. I told him, you can have your revenge but never aim at the girl again. Then my body turned into an afterimage and I quickly left. Just then, Rengoku had reached the location of the demon and a fight broke out between the lower moon and him. Oh, this will be fun. Third POV, Hero, the new lower moon demon ranked 2. A long time ago, when he had just become a demon, he was unfortunate enough to encounter the flame pillar Shinjuro Rengoku in one of his drunk patrol. On that night, he was stripped of his pride and honor. The flame Hashira not only cut him down with ease even in his intoxicated state, but he humiliated him. You, pathetic creature, the voice of the drunk man still echoed in his mind. That night, the flame Hashira cut apart his body and spirit. His physical body healed because of his demonic nature, but his spirit never did. So for years, he had been accumulating strength, waiting for the day he would enact his revenge. And now it was time. Hero aimed his rifle at the man who traumatized him that day, or at least that's what he thought. In actuality, he mistook Rengoku Kyojiro to be Shinjuro, thinking the son was the father. But even if he knew, it wouldn't matter. The demon was out for blood. But killing him now would be too easy. I want to see him suffer, Hero said and changed his aim to the pink-haired girl beside him. From both Rengoku and Mitsui's bright and unique hair, he assumed that they must be close. So he decides to kill her first. Grave mistake. Because the moment he pulled the trigger, something appeared beside him. It came without sound, without warning. Shoot. He missed. Hero didn't move a single inch after that. He couldn't, and even if he could, he wouldn't dare. Purple eyes looked down at him, and the intensity of those eyes dwarfed every bit of hatred the demon had inside him. It was like a fire being swallowed by a bigger fire. The hatred those eyes had for him easily swallowed the hatred Hero had for the flame Hashira. The killing intent and danger coming from those eyes were so great that he had already imagined himself dying 1,000 times over. No, those eyes killed him 1,000 times. There was no action, but the thing had already seen through every weakness of his existence and found infinite ways to exploit them. Be careful, you nearly hit someone important, it talked. No. He talked. It was a man. But even with the new information he got, Hero dared not even take a single breath. Those purple eyes reminded him of the demon he met when he was made the second rank of the lower moon. The first rank of the upper moon. Those eyes gave off the same feeling. The way they seemed to pierce his very soul, the way they seemed to pick out each flaw in his existence and judged him like a god. The human beside him was eerily similar to that demon. You are lucky that you have use, the man said, you can have your revenge but never aim at the girl again. The killing intent subsided and Hero finally had the courage to look. But when he did, his left eye started trembling before endless tears streamed down. He was confused. It was not him. The eye cried on its own, the left eye that bore the mark of the lower moon too. A hazy memory flashed in his mind, the memory of a purple swordsman standing above him while he cried for mercy on deaf ears. That was not him. It was the memory of the previous lower moon too. The man in front of him was the same demon slayer that killed the previous lower moon too, on Ryoku. His left eye continued crying until the tears turned to blood. But by then, the man was already gone. He immediately felt a heavy weight lifted off his shoulder. But he could not put down his guard because the fight was just beginning. Flame-breathing, first form, Rengoku, who located the demon by tracing the direction of the bullet, finally reached him. His mouth sucked in the air around as his blade burned like fire. Uncowing fire. Harrow shifted his focus to Rengoku. He would have this revenge for now. But he would also remember this night like he remembered the night he met Shinjuro. He will have his revenge against those purple eyes someday too. Pathetic. Harrow screamed and lunged at Rengoku with his guns and bombs. Seiji's POV, making sure that no civilians were near the bombs. Check. Making sure I had a good view of the demon so I could kill him anytime. Check. Seeing that there was no threat around Mitsuri. Check. Making sure Rengoku could handle the situation. Also check. Now it's time to bring out the popcorn and enjoy the show. It was one thing to see the characters but completely another to witness the story unfolding in real life. The attack on Tokyo was dumb if you really thought about it. It was planned and done by a demon with mental issues who was blinded by anger and had an unhealthy thirst for revenge. So it was far from perfect. For example, the fact that the demon was acting alone was incredibly stupid. Lower Moon usually had underlings working for them, but this one worked alone. It might have to do with the fact that his blood demon art was umbrakinesis and he could create shadow wolves using that. The shadow wolves were the only thing that posed a threat to the people because the demon himself was occupied with Rengoku. I watched the fight between Rengoku and Harrow from afar but close enough to act right away. Things were quite different from how it went in the manga. In this fight, Rengoku was overpowering the lower moon with ease. Rengoku was a lot stronger than his canon counterpart due to my existence. Having me as a friend had given him motivation the original Rengoku never had. I also helped him get stronger by pointing out the flaws in his techniques with my eyes whenever we trained together. Those simple things went a mile in refining his techniques as well. What's going on? How are you doing this? A swordsman can't beat a gun. I saw Harrow scream while Rengoku pursued him like a possessed man. You will harm no one, no more, Rengoku declared. Then the demon released multiple hand grenades from his shadow. That caused a giant explosion that not only knocked away Rengoku but blew up the demon himself. The demon quickly regenerated but Rengoku was faster to get up on his feet. Flame-breathing, esoteric art, my eyes saw a burst of fighting spirit erupt from Rengoku like an active volcano. The fire spread all around and shimmered in an intense glow. Then he burst forward with unstoppable momentum, the ground quaked with each step. My eyes could see Rengoku turning into a raging fire dragon that came like a meteorite to the enemy. Ninth form, Purgatory. The lower moon never really stood a chance. He did not even have time to pull out his ultimate move like he did in the manga. My eyes glowed purple as I imprinted Rengoku's esoteric art in my mind. That would make a fine addition to my collection. You know, there's a reason why me and Thanos were purple. A wide smile stretched my face while looking at that scene. No one, not even you, would be able to imagine the euphoric joy I felt at that moment. Why? Because my existence had indeed changed the course of fate. I did not even have to interfere directly. My influence and my action had caused a ripple effect that made Rengoku easily defeat Harrow, Lower Moon too. And that would keep on repeating itself. Even when facing against Akazan or Muzan, we would not win due to a twist of luck. I would deny all the sacrifices that were made. I would give this story a happy ending. I was hopeful. And hope was the first step to success. Love breathing, third POV, Mitsuri Kanroki, it's been nearly 3 months since she started training to become a demon slayer. She was trained by Rengoku and Seiji with as much care and attention as possible. So her progress had been incredibly fast. In the canon story, it took her 6 months to complete the final selection, but this time, she could have done it in 3 months. Seiji had even been thoughtful enough to take her out to hunt weak demons, so she was not totally inexperienced in the regards to demon slaying. But this was the first time she had witnessed such a scene. Help me. Run. Run. Everyone get away from the explosions. Go to the west side of the city. Just leave everything behind. People screamed in terror. They pushed each other and ran to protect their own safety. In times of danger, people often showed their true nature, and she learned today that most people were selfish. Her heart shrunk in her chest. It felt heavier, it felt denser. She turned her head towards the top of the building where she had just heard a massive explosion. Her superior body could instinctively sense the demon on top of that. The enemy was strong. She had not encountered few demons, but this was the first time she saw a lower moon. So she was a little shaken. Demons are the predators of human beings. She was prey, so of course her heart was filled with fear. It was like a deer in the presence of a lion. Mr. Rengoku, she whispered, in concern. Rengoku was strong, but she feared that he would get hurt in the face of the inhumane creature. She tried to bury her concern at the deepest part of her heart and turned towards someplace else. To the direction that was screaming for help. I'm coming, she yelled loudly before running towards the voice. When she reached there, she saw a mother and a child being surrounded by 3 shadow wolves. The first thing that came to her mind was saving them. And so she moved. Flame breathing, 3rd form, she said out loud because it helped her concentrate. Balzing universe. She yelled and dashed towards one of the shadow wolves before it could notice her. Her sword caught on a small yellowish fire and she delivered a vertical slash at the wolf, but... What? It did nothing. Her sword was stopped by the dark body of the shadow wolf. All the impact had been absorbed and the creature remained unharmed. That was not all, she could not pull away. Her sword was stuck, being sucked in by the shadow of the wolves like a black hole. Jar. The wolf growled and shifted its focus on her. The other 2 shadow wolves on the other hand were still focused on the mother and child. You are a dog, but... Mitsuri cried out, you are not cute at all. And she used to think that all dogs were cute because they were Seiji's favorite animal. She couldn't do it after all. At the beginning of her training, she was hopeful that she would be able to cultivate her strength as long as she put in effort. Her body was special and talented, it could absorb sword techniques like a sponge, and her sharp instincts made her a scary opponent in battle. Fighting was almost second nature. She also had enough strength and endurance to rival any of the top ranks in the Demon Slayer Corps. But there was one problem, a very vital problem. It had something to do with her greatest advantage, which was her body. It was both a blessing and a curse. She said it before, but she was incredibly strong since birth, but due to her special body, breathing styles did not work well with her. She had a problem learning breathing styles because her body was too special. Breathing styles at the end of the day were made for a normal human body, not for someone like her whose body was 8 times denser and only had pink muscles. Maybe sun breathing would have been good for her powerful body, but normal breathing styles tailored for mortal men? It did not work well. They were created to help normal human being to achieve supernatural strength, but she already had that, so you could see where the problem lies. It was almost limiting instead. The only breathing style that helped her was steroid breathing, which Seiji had taught her. Flame breathing, no matter how much she tried, was just not suitable for her. No. Don't take my son. The mother cried while hugging her child. Mitsuri watched all this with wide eyes that was shaking with worry and helplessness. She had to do something. No. She had to save them. In her most desperate time, Seiji suddenly appeared in her mind. The conversation she had with him a month prior flashed before her. Maybe I am not suited to become a demon slayer after all, Mitsuri said in a defeated tone after failing to execute the first technique of flame breathing for the 100th time. Seiji only huffed and chuckled. Yeah right, he said sarcastically. You have only been training for a month, don't give up too easily. Remember it took me almost 7 years to become a demon slayer, but I don't know what I'm doing wrong, Mitsuri whined. I see myself making progress in every other aspect other than the most important one, which was breathing style. Well, he explained patiently, you are unique Mitsuri, special even. Of course, the conventional style would not suit you. Then what should I do? Other than trying a few more years? Seiji said, and she pouted. She wanted to fight alongside him as soon as possible. He told her that she would become his Tsugoku after she became a demon slayer. She couldn't wait a year. When you learn how to fight the battles yourself, you will overcome all your problems, he said, and she tilted her head in confusion. So he continued. Don't fight with the sword, don't fight with your breathing style, fight with what you have been blessed with. Like I did, he said, and got close to her. He whispered, the thing is, we both are special compared to other people. To fight with a sword, to fight with a breathing style are for the mundane. Then he suddenly pulled back with a mischievous grin. When you realize that, you will find out that you can trust your gift. You will learn that all these are just shackles and you will make your own path. Mitsuri just sat there, not fully comprehending his words but remembering them nonetheless because she knew Seiji rarely spoke nonsense. Mitsuri closed her eyes, remembering his words. Then she threw away all of the techniques and the breathing styles she had learned until now. I want to help them, she screamed in her mind. Boom. Her body moved to fulfill her desire, her powerful body, her blessing. What she could not cut using flame breathing, she was easily able to destroy using the sheer strength of her body. When she opened her eyes again, she found herself standing in front of the mother and child. I was able to cut it, she said, awed with what she had achieved in the heat of the moment. But why though? She tired to remember how she was able to become so much stronger. Then she realized that her heart was beating rapidly in her chest before it happened. My heart, she grabbed her chest. And my body, she released a huge breath. Stay back, kid. Big sister will drive these bad dogs away, she exclaimed, and her heartbeat increased sharply. The wolves growled at her for a few seconds before lunging forward. Fight with yourself, not with the sword, she told herself. Then she exploded out with raw strength. Her body moved with great flexibility as she sliced through the wolves like cake. Her heart pounded in her chest. She stood up straight while the 2 wolves disintegrated after being cut. Thank you Seiji, she mouthed with a smile. Her body, her gift. When her heart pounded in her chest, she was able to utilize her powerful body to its utmost potential. This was the blessing that was better than any sword. She did not need further enhancement or techniques to be powerful, she just needed to learn how to utilize her gift as best as she could, like how Seiji utilized his eyes. Rapid heartbeats, she said to herself while wondering how she could increase her heartbeat even more. In a few seconds, she smiled because she found the answer. What was it that would get her heart racing like an engine every single time? The answer was Seiji. The thought of him made her heart pound rapidly in her chest. *JRR. More shadow wolves surrounded her, but she just closed her eyes, put her hand on her heart and recalled the first time she met Seiji. She remembered how he caught her while she was dyeing her hair, and most importantly, she recalled how he accepted the engagement. Her heart felt like they were about to burst at that moment. He had changed her so much. Love had changed her so much. He taught her how to accept herself, his love for her showed her how to love herself. He had made her stronger, he made her happier. The shadow wolves lunged at her from all directions. Her lips curved in a smile, love breathing, first form, she fought with her heart. In the end, that was her greatest blessing, even more so than her strong body. Because it was with her heart that she was able to love him, it was her heart that he loved. That, was the most important thing in the world. More than anything else. First love, upper moon, Seiji's POV, the whole thing came to an end. It was easy and it was safe. It was a direct consequence of my existence. Asterisk whoosh. Asterisk I immediately disappeared in a gust of wind after everything was over and each character had gone through their respective character development. My arms scooped up the surprised Mitsuri and held her tight. I twirled around while she tired to make sense of what just happened. You did it. I yelled and laughed, similar to how Rengoku would often do. WA. I smushed her with love like the adorable creature she was. She always activated my cute aggression. I had seen everything that transpired today and I was filled with immense pride for her. After realizing it was me, Mitsuri did not question anything else and laughed alongside me, my joy seemingly infecting her. How I was suddenly here, why I was so happy or anything else was not a priority in her mind. I was happy so she was happy. It couldn't get simpler than that. You did it. I said with a smile. I did. I did, she yelled, matching my energy. Finally, I stopped spinning around and put her down on the ground. The surrounding people looked at us oddly. After all, an attack just happened with multiple explosions going off everywhere, yet here we were, like a happy couple. I couldn't care less about them, but I did scan the surroundings while I spun. There was still chaos and people were still panicked, but they should calm down soon. Good job Mitsuri, for finding your own path and saving everyone, I complimented her. She smiled and melted under my approval. It is your uniqueness that saved everyone. So next time, be proud for being different, not ashamed, I said, and she nodded again, now with tears in her eyes. She came up and hugged me again for a second time, her face buried deeply in my chest. I smoothed the back of her hair and have a kiss on her head. Thank you, she said, and I could hear her through the vibrations on my chest. She would have found herself anyway even without my help, I knew that from the anime. So although I was glad, I did not feel like I deserved the gratitude. We stayed like that for a long time while the city settled into calm. The firefighters and the police took care of the aftermath of the attack. My eyes still remained vigilant though, observing everything closely. I saw Rengoku come up to me, and by the time he reached us, I had already noted down every injury he sustained better than any modern machinery would have done. Unlike in the manga, he did not pass out after the fight because it was not really a tough fight for him. He was already strong enough to take care of the lower moons without much difficulty or risk. Good job slaying that demon, I said. Ha 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 ha. No demons can withstand the fire of righteousness. He said, and you don't have to worry about me. Other than bursting my eardrums, I suffered no fatal injuries. I can see that, I said. He seemed to be even louder than before, and he was attracting the eyes of every civilian in the vicinity, probably due to his damaged eardrums. I guess you are finally one of us now, I said. Hashira, I gave him a small bow of respect. His eyes turned wide for a moment before a happy realization hit his face. He smiled widely and looked to the sky, taking in the moment of his victory. I guess I am, he said and looked at me. Comrade. He had never called me a comrade since I became a Hashira. So I was pleasantly surprised when I saw his lips move to produce that word. What else could I do except nod in acknowledgement? Mitasri pushed herself away from me, but when she noticed that my shirt was wet from her tears, she panicked, saying she was sorry for ruining my clothes and tried to wipe them away. Don't worry about it, I said and stopped her. Now that the fight is over, shall we all get food to celebrate our victory? I said, my treat. You read my thoughts, Seiji. Rengoku exclaimed while Miss Yuri nodded with stars in her eyes and a watering mouth. Wait. What about us? One of the demon slayers who fought under Rengoku asked. There were a few other swordsmen behind him too. You all can join us, I said, and they cheered. The rest of the evening was spent on a good note. Except it was hard as fuck to find a restaurant that opened after the attack had happened. The next day, Ryu Rengoku Kyojiro, accept the title of Hashira and promise to become a pillar that supports the Demon Slayer Corps? Every Hashira witnessed Ubuyashiki crowning Rengoku with the title of Hashira. Most of us were glad to welcome a new ally, but some were more than just glad, they were happy and proud, like me. The sun was blazing in the sky with a new hope. Humanity had found yet another protector, a pillar. I do, Rengoku replied while kneeling down in front of Ubuyashiki. The title of Hashira is proof of your strength. Do you promise to use this strength to protect the weak? I promise. Then rise, Flame Hashira, Ubuyashiki declared, and after taking a breath, Rengoku stood up, tall and proud, strong and brave. Stand strong, and never falter, Ubuyashiki ordered. With that, the other Hashiras started cheering for Rengoku, who turned around, now donning a new Haori, the one we saw in the anime. A white Haori with flame patterns at the end. It was the Haori passed down in their family, inherited by every flame Hashira. And so, at the age of 17, Rengoku Kyojiro became the flame Hashira and replaced his father. It was the rise of a warrior who would change the course of the demon war, an inspiration to all. Seiji's POV, things have been going well for a long time now. Maybe it was going too well. And you know what they said, life was a cruel mistress, it comes at you when you were least prepared. Happiness and good times eventually come to an end. After the celebration of Rengoku's promotion was over, we all attended to our duties again. We got our assignments, and this time, even Kane got an assignment. It was about helping a certain village that was infected by a strange disease. Don't be such a worrywart, Seiji, this is not even a slaying mission. I just have to go to the village and provide medical help, that's all, she said with an amused smile when I asked her what her assignment was. Maybe I should have stopped her then. Who am I kidding? I never saw it coming. When all things are going well, life finds a way to stab you. And it stabs you in the most painful place. That is. The words escaped my mouth as my eyes, wide with shock and fear, saw the Kasugai crow of Kane flying towards me. It was covered in blood that was not its own. Boom. Thunder roared in the darkness of the night as I blitzed through the forest like a natural calamity. It never crossed my mind that Kane's encounter with Doma was not just an encounter of chance. It was because of my blind faith in what I knew from my past life. A false confidence that came from things always going according to my plan. The words I read from the Kasugai crow rang in my mind like a chilling breeze in winter. Upper moon, right on time, third POV, Kane Kocho, it hurts. It hurts so much. Shall I save you from your pain and suffering? A disgustingly chippy voice said to her while she was on her knees. Breathing alone hurts, doesn't it? Your lungs are completely frozen and ruptured. The demon had a wide smile on his face while looking down at her. Come on, beg me, the demon with rainbow eyes said and pulled her hair. He forced her to look at him while he smiled a religious smile. Beg me to send you to paradise, worship me, it hurts. Everything hurts. Kane felt her consciousness slipping away and she recalled the series of events that led to this. It was like her life flashing before her eyes. At first, it was like any other assignment. A village needed help as many people died from an unknown disease. These kinds of things were more common than you would expect in the rural areas of Japan during the 1900s. A village with a hospital or a doctor was rare. So as a medical expert, Kane set out to the village to help them. It took her only a day and a deep inspection of the patients to realize that the disease was the work of a demon. At that moment, she realized that she should leave. Seiji had warned her too many times to continue the mission recklessly, and she wanted to respect the worries of the man she loved. She would return home, report her findings, and maybe set out again with more help to kill the demon. But all plans died soon after. It was too late. It was not only the disease that plagued the village. There was a deep mind controlling in the village as well. And this was no ordinary work of a blood demon art, instead, it was a mind control on a deeper scale. A cult. The whole village was a cult. They called themselves the Eternal Paradise Faith. It was a cult led by the demon who now tortured her for his amusement. She could not escape the village anymore, and that brought her face to face with the demon who seemed to orchestrate the whole thing just to capture her. The air was cold and heavy. An ordinary civilian would not be able to take even one breath with such heavy air. Kane looked upon the rainbow eyes of the demon, and the number 2 written on the demon's face inflicted endless despair in her heart, despair heavier than the air. "Come on, pray to me." The demon looked so kind. There was no guilt or self-awareness on his face. He genuinely believed that he was a god and that he was being benevolent. Kane spat at the demon, or at least that's what she tried to do. But what came out was crimson blood that splattered on the demon's face. The smile on the demon froze like ice before he violently pushed Kane's head, smashing her face on the floor. Then he pulled her hair and threw her to the other side of the room. Boom. Numb. Everything was numb, there was no longer pain. And that scared Kane more than when she was in pain. Because as much as pain was uncomfortable, it was a sign that you are still hanging on to life. Feeling pain means that your body is still fighting and working to keep on surviving. But numbness means your body is not working as it should be anymore. It was giving up in front of the threat it deemed to be impossible to escape. She was dying from the lack of air. She crawled away from the place, searching for air that was fit to inhale. Luckily, she found ventilation and she crawled under it. She took in a deep breath and her body came back to life. She felt agonizing pain once more, but she was glad to welcome the old friend. Yes, she was still alive. "You truly are an admirable creature. Your desire to survive makes me want to shed a tear," the demon said. The room they were in was the main room of the cult. It was marred with many slash marks and spiky icicles that spoke of the battle that just took place. Kane fought. For a long time she fought against the demon that played with her like a toy. But as the battle went on, the cold air froze her lungs and made her incapable of fighting. "Then how about letting me go?" she said with a shaky smile. She wouldn't allow to show her weakness to the demon and give him the satisfaction. "No, I don't think so. I want you to be part of my paradise," he said and raised his hand. Then he gestured to one of the walls that had a cupboard. On it, you could see the skulls of the women he had devoured. They were stunning beauties while they were living and captured Doma's attention. Now he put their skulls on the cupboard as some kind of trophy. He even maintained them neatly. "You are the most twisted demon I ever encountered," Kane remarked while looking at the skulls. "I prefer the word benevolent," he said, and before he could finish, Kane blurred towards him. She thrust her sword as hard as she could and as fast as she could, but the demon stepped to the side with ease. When Kane stopped a few meters away, she collapsed on the ground with many cut marks on her body. The demon not only dodged but managed to cut her in the exchange. She didn't even see him move. "I'm sorry, I was not through with those cuts," Doma said and unfurled his fan made of blades, his weapon of choice. "You are still living and hence, suffering." Maybe this was where she was going to die. She hoped it was not, but the situation seemed impossible to survive. She was going to die here. Even if her Kasugai crow found a demon slayer nearby. What could they do? It was the upper moon that she was up against. It would only increase the number of causalities. Tears started falling from her eyes, but they only worked to hurt her eyes. Her tears froze due to the freezing temperatures of the air. The best thing she could do now was go out fighting with all she had. And so, she took in a huge breath that forced her frozen lungs to work. The adrenaline in her veins caused the temperature of her body to rise and fight against the biting cold. Flower breathing, final form, Kane fought with all her might for the final time. Seiji's POV, I ran. I ran. And I ran some more. Asterisk boom. Asterisk asterisk boom. Asterisk asterisk boom. Asterisk asterisk boom. Asterisk the earth quaked with each step I took. Thunder breathing, first form. More. More. Faster. Even faster. Thunderclap and flash, 200-fold. Asterisk boom. Asterisk boom. Asterisk I ran until my leg was completely destroyed. The muscles in my left leg had been exhausted and torn beyond belief. Yet I kept on running. Even the Kasugai crow flying overhead couldn't catch up with me. Even Raven was lagging far behind. It was fortunate that I was curious enough to ask where Kane would be heading for the mission. With my eidetic memory, it was not hard to find my way around the thick jungles and run towards where she was. I used Thunderclap and Flash 200 times. With it, I was able to cover nearly 10 kilometers. The forest was ravaged and I left a trail of destruction in my wake. I did not use my right leg, however, as I would need that for the upcoming fight. But my left leg, I destroyed completely. I was not sure if it would be able to heal later on. But that did not bother me in the slightest when survival was not certain. I was going straight towards Doma, who was Upper Moon too. I didn't have the privilege to worry about how my legs would heal when I could die in this fight. The only thing I was certain of was that Kane was not going to die. I'd tear down the sky before she died. Finally, I reached the village in the middle of the night. It was eerily quiet with the villagers gathering near the entrance of the village. I did a quick scan of the surroundings and also located Kane. My eyes saw her fighting against the Upper Moon, and with a quick calculation, I determined that I had enough time to reach her before the fight ended. Doma was playing with her, and although that made me burn with rage, it meant I had time. So I stopped. Ha. The air around me churned as I used constant breathing, healing breath. I also looked down at my left leg and scanned the injury. It was bad. Just by looking at it, a surgeon might give up. I cut off 2 branches from a tree and swiftly chipped them down to be straight. I took off my haori and cut it into ropes before tying the sticks on my left leg to support my weight and straighten it. Like a makeshift cast. Could you believe that? One of my legs was completely fucked up right before the most important battle of my life. If my life was a story, I would complain to the author and give him hell for nerfing me like this. I put my faith in you, Shounen Power Up, I said aloud, trying to calm my roaring heart. I was doing my best to calm down before rushing in. Being blinded by my rage would not do me good in this situation. It would only tire me more and cloud my thought process. So I did everything I could to calm myself down, controlling my thoughts. Cracking jokes. But inside, my heart fell due to the sheer emotions weighing it down. Let's go. I quickly made my way into the village. Luckily, I spent weeks training with Jigoro, former Thunder Hashira, and he had lost a leg in battle. So I could copy his movements and implement them to my own. When I entered the village, I was immediately stopped by a mob. Many of the villagers had gathered around, holding weapons like a sickle, axe, machete, etc. They seemed to be guarding the place to make sure no one entered the village. My eyes saw a demon amongst them as well. Look! He is an intruder trying to disturb our Lord while he is busy with his apostle. Stop him! The villagers screamed in unison. It was a small group gathered to stop any help from reaching Kane. They did it after a Kasugai crow escaped from them to call reinforcement. I was trying so hard to remain calm. But my emotions got the better of me. Anger, desperation, immense frustration, and then hate. They were cultists under Doma, they had no sin except being brainwashed since they were born. They probably didn't deserve it. But I killed them all. I'm sorry. I couldn't waste any more time to knock them out. I ran out of kindness. Thunderstone breathing, Arc of Ruin, my blade mowed them all down with a single slash, the demons hiding between the mob included. The wind blade produced from my sword cleaved everything. Bisected bodies decorated the ground, crimson blood hid the natural brown of the earth. Their death was swift and merciless. It'd probably haunt me for the rest of my life, but I'd rather that than Kane's death haunt me for the rest of my life. They were unimportant. So I burst towards the center of the village where there was a temple. My eyes locked on the smiling demon who made me do all these things. Oh, how I hate him. But on the bright side, asterisk poem. Star. I got there just in time. Doma vs. Seiji, begin, third POV, she was losing strength. She knows. She was getting weaker and weaker. He knows it. This fight was merely a play done for the amusement of the demon. They both knew it. I am going to die here. Kane concluded in her mind when she felt her body starting to get slower and her adrenaline ran out. The chilling cold returned to her, weighing down on her body and making her go numb once more. They were slowly dragging her closer and closer to the brink of death. What a sad sight this is, your own body is failing you, Doma commented and parried any attacks that came his way with one hand. Why not just accept your fate and give in to my kindness? I assure you, there will no longer be a pain in paradise, the demon said before swinging his war fan to create a gust of cold air that sent her flying to the opposite of the room. When the fact that she was really going to die now sank in, her life flashed before her eyes. It started with her dear little sister, Shinobu, then it shifted to Kaneo, then her friends at the Flower Mansion, her fellow Hashira, Jyomiai who saved her and then Master Ubuyashiki etc. All of those people flashed in her mind. Time seemed to wait for her as she relived the memories of a lifetime in an instant. And then finally, he appeared in her mind. She shed a tear for this one because it came with regret. That was why he was the last one. Seiji appeared in her mind and never left. She felt immense regret in her heart. She should have confessed to him on that night, and now she was never going to get the chance again. That was her only regret. I love you, 3 words that she wished to could say to the deaf man. How silly. She propped up her body with the last of her strength and leaned on the wall. Now, she could only watch as Doma slowly approached her with an ecstatic smile. A drug addict smiles. The demon was completely insane. Sejii, his name left her lips and the sound of his name brought a smile to her face even in such a situation. He must be busy with his mission now, located directly opposite to hers. She wished he was here somehow. Not to save her like he had done a million times but to see him one last time. And confess. Bzzzzzzz Doma stopped coming forward and Kane froze when they saw a spark of lighting between them. It was the weirdest thing, Kane wondered if it was a hallucination. A chilling sensation washed over them as well, much more for Doma. It was like a deep foreboding. The spark of lighting was a prophet that foretold a coming disaster. Not 3 seconds later, thunder erupted and tore through the building. Everything was ripped apart due to the violent force. At that moment, Kane saw hope and Doma saw a powerful threat. The foundation of the building shook violently with the appearance of the purple swordsman. His lack of reaction due to the loud sound hints at his deafness and his pristine sword was a signature that all demons were now familiar with. Not a second later, Seiji brought up his sword and his robotic voice declared. Wind breathing, 4th form. He swung his long blade towards the roof of the building. The rush of wind and hurricanes produced by his attack ripped apart the building. Rising storm dust, boom. A loud shockwave oppressed the area. The temple of the eternal paradise faith was completely ripped apart and shredded under the power of the wind. The full moon in the sky was revealed as the roof collapsed. Seiji ran towards Kane and stopped any debris from hitting her. After another shockwave, the building was destroyed completely. Kane felt life return to her body and she also took in a deep and needed breath. Her previous injuries seemed not too grave anymore with him around. It was because of this that she fell so deeply in love with him. The Demon King could stand in front of her but under his protective presence, all fears were dispelled. She knew she was saved once more. Seiji's POV, lighting breathing to split the building in half so that it could collapse more easily. Then wind breathing not only destroys the building but blows all of the cold air away and allows the air to be breathable once more. I brought the battle into the open because Doma's blood demon art worked better in tight spaces. His ability to freeze the surrounding temperature would be harder to use in the open air, especially with a wind breath user. And the lack of a roof would allow the sun to shine upon the demon the moment it rose. Even if I could not defeat him, I needed to keep him occupied until sunrise and I would win. These actions were planned in a few seconds before I reached them, so it was not perfect. But I hoped this would turn the battle in my favor. My, what do we have here? If it isn't the famous Hashira. Doma slowly walked out from the smoke with a shit-eating grin on his face. The situation seemed to amuse him even more. I hate your face more than I thought I would, I spat out. I cursed my eyes because they would remember his face forever. I looked away from the disgusting living flesh and turned to Kane. I quickly scanned her body and the injury she sustained. She had many wounds and she was beyond exhaustion, but there was nothing fatal. Her lungs were the ones that were most damaged. Maybe being so pretty is not ideal, you even attract demons, I joked. Maybe it was a bad attempt, but I only had a second to make it, so please don't judge me. She smiled. If she was not so injured she'd giggle sweetly like she always did with my bad jokes. But at least she was not scared, and that was all that mattered. Right then, I quickly turned around and slashed 2 spikes made of ice before they could skewer me. I saw them coming from the reflection of her eyes. You dodged that? I thought you were deaf. Doma asked aloud before he struck a thinking pose. Are you like Lord Kokoshibo? Do you have a 360-degree vision? I remained silent and simply observed every cell in his body. From his body language, the contents of his stomach, his muscle construction, from the pattern of his breath and heartbeat, I used every single piece of information to expose his weakness. My eyes saw his strength, his weakness. Your eyes, he commented, a bit serious this time. You think you can beat me? He smiled widely after that. How interesting. I'm so glad you decided to come here, you make things a whole lot more interesting. Tell me, how do you plan to beat me? And so I did. I told him. Boom. Doma vs Seiji, 1, Seiji's POV, I moved faster than the speed of sound. A statement that would be incomprehensible to the ordinary because it was an impossible feat, a shore to fantasy. To normal eyes, I literally disappeared from my position and appeared behind the demon in the span of an instant. My movement was graceful and soft, so there was no explosion of force. It was a consequence of perfect movement. There was no shockwave, every newton of force worked to propel me forward at incredible speed. No wasted energy, no nothing. My damaged leg dragged me down, but only for the briefest millisecond. Blood spilled out from Doma's neck and he grabbed it with his pale hand. His face showed no amount of surprise because the feats he witnessed were beyond expectation. You are. He started when his neck healed. Awfully fast, now it was my time to bleed. A small cut appeared on my forehead and a drop of crimson blood bleed out. He actually aimed for my eyes, but I moved my head in time so he only left a scratch on my forehead. I turned my body to face him fully once more and we both took a moment to observe each other's strength. Kane was left defenseless at the moment, but she was safe. The brief exchange made it clear to us both that the battle was closer than anticipated. The moment he went after Kane would make an opening for me to end him forever. I almost wanted him to go after her. I guess there are all those stories about you for a reason, Purple One, he commented and unfurled his war fan. Then he disappeared. I followed the next moment. A loud vibration akin to a firing machine gun resounded in the middle, followed by bright sparks that indicate metal hitting metal. Then we returned to our previous position. I stood in front of Kane and he stopped opposite us, meters away. In this clash, I remained unharmed. But it was a different case for Doma. The half portion of his neck was cut and his hand swiftly slid off his arm. A copious amount of blood decorated the floor. My. He said, and blood came out from his lips. I better take you seriously if I don't want to die. I took a deep breath after that, my instinct screaming at me louder than ever. Would you believe me if I told you that he was as fast as me? I wouldn't believe it if I didn't experience it myself. The only reason I had the advantage in our brief clash was my eyes. I could predict his attacks and movements even before he himself thought of them. And with each clash, I got to know more and more about him. That was why I allowed him to dictate the pace of the battle. The longer we fight, the better for me. I was not only learning more about his battle pattern and fighting style. Dragging the fight meant that sunrise was getting closer. "Tell me more," I said and pointed my long sword at him. My eyes released a purple glow and I read him like a book. What attacks was his body most used to? Where was his weakness? Which foot did he move first before he moved? Did he inhale or exhale before an attack? How many times did he blink in our clash? Which side was he better at protecting? What did his eyes reflect? How long was his reach? How dangerous was each move? I went to the very basics of fighting once more. Fighting was not fighting, to me, it was a conversation. Make him talk, listen, and reply perfectly. Listen to his actions, do not aim for his weakness, instead, you should adapt and become his weakness. Asterisk whoosh. Asterisk a swing of his war fan made the air scream. My eyes saw the particles of ice in the air that would no doubt freeze my lungs if I inhaled them. The temperature around us plummeted, it became so cold that I could feel it in my joints. His shit-eating smile returned once more. I quickly took the remaining of my haori and threw it to Kane. She used it not only to cover her body but to cover her nose so that she could breathe amid the cold air. "Let's play," he invited me. I saw it, I saw our similarities. We were both similar in the sense that fighting was not fighting to us. For him, fighting was more like playing. After all, what kind of god fight with mortals? To him, fighting was a fun game to play. A game where he could not lose. A game that I quickly adapted to. Flame wind breathing, I became his weakness. My leg hurts when I put body weight on it, but through sheer will and adrenaline, I moved perfectly. A gust of hot air revolved around me, my body heat rose rapidly due to fire breathing. We blurred. Inferno. I saw flames folding around me, battling the cold air with me. Doma lunged at me, matching the intensity of my charge. His golden war fan shone with a dangerous light. Blood demon art, barren hanging garden, a series of 10 successive fan attacks generated ice shards that came at me mercilessly. They clashed with my sword and the sound produced a piercing shockwave that sent goosebumps through my body. They were heavy, his attacks were so damn heavy, an elegant swing of those fans had the weight of a ton. The vibration of my sword rattles my bones, numbing my arms. Yet I was not in trouble. My sword wrapped in golden flames sliced at his head. Doma leaned back his head to the limit, breaking the bones of his neck but ultimately dodging a direct hit. But the whirlwind in my swing ripped his face off, exposing muscle and bone. No matter how dangerous his attacks were. They lost a lot of their danger when he told me before he attacked. I saw it. I saw the moisture collecting and freezing in the air. I saw the quick draw of his breath with each swing, and I saw the wiggle of every muscle fiber in his body. They told me everything he was going to do. His eyes widened, and I allowed that information to stay in my mind a little longer than every other information processed. He leapt. Or at least his body told me he was going to. So I did a half spit to lower my body and I cut off his legs clean off. Then I blasted past him in a rush of wind that inflicted massive pressure on his body, almost tearing away at his skin. Blood demon art, freezing cloud. He bent his body in an impossible manner. You'd have to be boneless to make such a maneuver when you had no legs, but that was what the demon did. Then he swung his fan and sent a gust of cold winds at me. To be more specific, he was aiming to freeze my eyes. He tried the same thing with Kaneo in the manga. The freezing air with many frozen particles came at me. I smiled. Wind breathing, fourth form, I slid to a stop and turned my body to face the incoming clouds. Rising storm. I swung my giant sword as hard as I could. The air was forcefully turned into a whirlwind and I unleashed chaos in the atmosphere. The hurricane fought against the incoming cold winds, blasting them away. That was not all, the wind blades continued their journey to Doma, ripping everything else in their way. The demon healed his limbs and his face in but one instant and he lunged at me. I also did the same and blitzed towards him. Our arms blurred and we entered into a battle of skills. He was a genius, his techniques with his war fans were far more refined than I would otherwise expect. Yet when it came to techniques, I had no rival. I was technique god. My eyes read each attack before it happened. My predictions and visions of the present collided and my brain worked overtime to keep up with all the information. Each time his fan connected with my sword, they made a puncture in the atmosphere, releasing a shockwave that worked to destroy the cold air in the atmosphere. Our movements became faster and faster, he tried to overpower me and wait for the time my humanity would catch up to me. Humans get tired, demons don't. But years of training and perfect movement allowed me to go toe-to-toe with his endurance. There was no wasted energy in my movement and the momentum of each clash was used perfectly to set up the other. My eyes saw the transfer of kinetic energy between us and manipulated that transfer so efficiently that I moved like a machine, and not human. You are by far, the strongest human I've ever fought. Doma declared as he tried to close the distance between us, but I didn't allow it. My long sword served its purpose and kept the distance between myself and my enemy. He was far enough that I could see his whole body. Yobler, as I said before, he tried to close the distance between us and that cost him his jaw. Every angle that he tried to take, every opening he sought, he only met the sharp end of my blade. I was winning. If we were both human then I could say I was many times superior to him. But demons had advantages that more than made up for our difference in skill. He regenerated his jaw instantly and this time, he backed away. He thought I would follow him and take advantage of the opening by plunging my blade into his heart. Then he would use his fan to chip away at my sword. The length of my reach was becoming too annoying for him so he wanted to take it away. But his plan never came to reality. They died a plan. His body told me what he was trying to do already. The way he moved his arms apart to reveal an opening in his chest, the way he changed the grip on his fan to attack close-ranged. Too obvious. Instead, I gave the perfect reply. Thunderstone breathing, arc of ruin, I held my sword with both hands and swung with all the strength my arms could muster. The air vibrated and a high-pitched sound ruptured the ice particles. Explode like thunder. Be strong like stone. Employ all the muscle fibers in your arm, generating every drop of raw strength. And do that again and again and again with every second of your swing, stacking up your power through the concept of repetitive action. I did not even have to hit my opponent. My blade was able to cut everything standing in its direction. Doma tried to block the incoming attack with his two golden war fans but they were sliced through with ease. No resistance evolved from an attempt, all was cut. Doma's body was chopped in half. In his futile attempt to destroy my weapon, I destroyed his and turned him into a Kit Kat. His body fell to the ground with a thud, his eyes wide. The exchange came to a stop. I remained standing and he fell, not once, but twice. I heaved my sword on my shoulder. My arms felt like jelly so such a minor action felt difficult at the moment. I gave a smile, a shit-eating grin that was like his. White hair, pretty eyes, playful and cut into two. The similarity is too much, is that you Gojo? I joked in amusement. He had done that to my Kane, right? Play around while she was writhing on the floor. His upper body looked at me. His smile was no longer to be seen. Ma, how unbefitting of an upper moon, he said with a sigh. In a burst of flesh, he regenerated his lower half and all the clothes with it. That's fucking weird. How the fuck did he regenerate clothes? Even more weird, his lower body also regenerated but with ice. The bisected body turned into a puppet as they both rose together. I guess things are getting serious now. I took in a deep breath and readied myself to talk once more. Doma vs. Seiji. 2. Seiji's POV. Doma was a powerful demon by himself. But by no means was that his greatest strength. His true power lies in his blood demon art, his ability to create clones of himself, to be specific. In the manga, it was shown that he could create at least 6 ice clones of himself. And each one of these clones was as powerful as him. That means he could increase his overall power 6 times, anytime he wants. Do you like it? It's an ice clone of myself, Doma said, but there was no smile on his face. And it can use all of the techniques I use. I allowed my eyes to observe the ice clone carefully, and the discovery I made caused me to frown deeply. It was made entirely of ice, which meant that I would have a much harder time predicting its movement since it was not made of flesh and bone. These things had always been one of my weaknesses: blood demon art, spells that did not even try to follow the logic of this world. Your eyes are powerful, I'll admit. But you can't see everything, can you? Doma said, and the ice clone leapt into the air. It sent a barrage of ice spikes towards me, which I destroyed with my sword. But the fragments of the ice were still sharp enough to leave scratches on my skin. The ice clone then landed behind me. I shifted my position to see him, but then Doma blitzed towards me. Cling. My blade met his demonic claws, and they created sparks when Doma pushed against me. My injured leg faltered and I was pushed back. No matter how similar you are to him, you are only a human. Your vision is limited to 180 degrees, he said. His lips began curving once more. He was right. I saw the ice clone rushing at me from the shiny reflection of my blade. I used thunder breathing to explode in raw strength. I forced Doma away with a swing of my sword, and I barely had enough time to duck under the horizontal attack of the ice clone. His arms had a sharp edge like a blade. Then it started. A battle where I was constantly on the edge of dying. Doma, with the help of his ice clone, took full advantage of my limited vision and attacked me from different directions at once. This was a weakness I always knew I had yet couldn't find a solution to. My enemy was exploiting it to the fullest. I was always stronger in a 1 versus 1 fight, but when 2 entities attacked me at the same time and it became 2 versus 1, I learned the limit of my eyes real quick. I had 2 eyes, yet I could only focus on one thing. The fight was a blur of speed even from my perspective. I took turns fighting against the 2. I predicted the attacks of Doma like before, while giving more attention to the ice clone, which I had trouble predicting. Perfect movement allowed me to fight efficiently and barely keep up with the coming onslaught. The air vibrated due to the exchange of blows. On long sword blurred to fend off 4 attacks. Doma used both his hands and the clone used both arms to attack. Sometimes I would use my elbow or kicks to continue. I would kick at Doma's knees when he was going to step forward. I elbowed the ice golem at the blunt part of its arm before swinging again at Doma. Everything happened in a flash, yet the calculated moves I made in the gap between instances could only be described as a miracle. But even that was not enough. Swoosh. I did a flip in the air to create distance and dodge 4 attacks coming at me. I realized then that when I was in the air, looking down, I could see them both. In an instant, I came up with a strategy. I started leaping in the air. The moment my feet made contact with the ground was the only one time when my feet touched the ground. That way, I was able to fend off attacks coming at me easier. Although an aerial fight was limiting, as long as I could see the attacks coming, I thought I would able to manage it. I used their attacks coming up to split me at a way to remain in the air as well, doing my best to survive the onslaught. But that strategy did not last long. Blood Demon Art X2. My eyes saw the gathering of moisture in the air. The water froze and formed an ice lotus that had intricate details. If I were not in the middle of battle, I would pause to admire its beauty. Then those lotus started spinning and grew sharp vines that easily moved at the speed of sound like a whip. My eyes saw the way they sliced through the frigid air. One strike was enough to tear through flesh. Lotus vines, X2 to make matters worse, his clone, the one I could hardly predict, used the exact same technique. 2 upper moon level attacks came at me while I was in the air. Time slowed down to a crawl and I saw the vines along with the sharp petals spinning my way. They were a spinning razor of calamity, spiraling towards me with the cold intent of murder. For the first time in my life, I was lost for words. There was no reply from me. The only thing I did was minimize the attack. The vines came at me, the air displaced from their sheer speed created vibrations in the atmosphere. When they made contact with my flesh, it looked like I was made of cake. They sliced me up, leaving wounds from which blood splurted out like a waterfall. But that was the best outcome. The other productions I made all tell a scene where I was chopped into pieces. I saw everything in slow motion, therefore the pain I felt was also slow and agonizing. The attacks left multiple slash marks on my body, but none of them were enough to cut through bone. When I landed on the ground, I nearly slipped on my own blood. But I remained calm and strong, for I finally had the ability to fight back. I gripped my sword with both hands and with the strength of a dying man, I unleashed it. Storm breathing, first form, my body screamed at me, protesting against using such a tiring technique at the situation. They did not want to move, they wanted to run away and heal from the injuries I had sustained. But the will of my heart forced them to move, and move they did. In a fight or flight situation, my body fought with everything it had. Tempest fury, my arm exploded to action as every fiber of the muscles in my arm worked together to produce raw strength in a single instant's thunder breathing. A shockwave erupted and a small hurricane formed from my swing. Wind blades came to life and ripped apart flesh, bones and ice. Wind breathing. My arm did not lose accuracy even when it moved with such force. The kinetic energy of my swing was controlled and I hit only what I wanted, Doma and his ice doll. There was no wasted force on anything else. Water breathing. The end result was the highest caliber of man-made catastrophe. Everything in front of me was minced into pieces. The ice lotus and its vines were shredded, leaving no fragments, and the same thing goes for the ice doll. Asterisk boom. Asterisk Doma himself was ripped into pieces. But the thud of something falling made my heart waver. That did not finish him off. It was a risk, but one I thought it best to take. The fact that he was winning and even inflicted grave injuries upon me caused him to let his guard down. I took that chance and attacked with the best I had. Yet it was not enough. Ha! I mouthed in despair. Doma's eyes were demonic red. He was able to save his upper body from the attack from his shoulder up. They were covered with impenetrable ice that shielded him from the wind blades. But still, he took a while to regenerate. Yet I couldn't take advantage of it because I was stuck in my place. My body ached all over and refused to move. You really are dangerous. Lord Muzan should be glad that I end you today, Doma said while his body reconstructed itself, cell by cell. It was not fair. It was not fair that he could regenerate from such an injury so easily while I could not even move a muscle. I hate it. I hate it with every fiber of my being. Right then, a blur came at Doma while he was regenerating. But even though he was not fully healed, he was able to block the incoming slash that came his way. You are not forgetting about me, are you? I was the one you targeted in the first place. Kane said, her eyes crying blood, a consequence of overusing the final form of flower breathing. No, not at all. Quite the opposite, Doma said, and with half legs, they started fighting once more. I couldn't do anything else but watch as my body recovered from the aftermath of storm breathing. They engaged in a short exchange, but as Doma regenerated, he quickly overpowered Kane. She moved with the same calculating manner as I did. Her eyes working like mine but on smaller scale. She was like a weaker version of me, to be honest. So how could she possibly stand a chance? She was doing everything she could to hold on for longer, to give me a chance to recover. Her body was pushed beyond its limits and her eyes were slowly losing their light the longer she used her technique. I'm done playing, it's not fun anymore, Doma said and kicked Kane at her abdomen, sending her flying away like a ragdoll. She managed to catch herself in the air and slid to a stop right beside me. Kane. I called her. I'm fine, don't worry, she replied softly, with ragged breath. She was not fine. My eyes saw the extent of her injuries, I saw her lungs tearing at themselves with each breath she took, I saw her shattered bones, her torn muscles and ligaments. And I saw her blinding eyes. I don't think she would be able to see normally after this battle. Blood demon art, ice dolls, chilling words fell upon the battlefield. The wind picked up speed as moisture froze up, leaving the air so dry and cold that it was difficult to get even one breath. That was only the beginning of our despair as 6 ice clones started being constructed around us. In a matter of seconds, we were surrounded by the 6 ice dolls along with Doma, who spread his arms dramatically. Like a god. This was it, this was the might of the upper moon too. I was still not strong enough to take him, not nearly strong enough. You will die here today, and I will take both of you to paradise, Doma said and smiled widely. A demon playing God. How revolting. Blood demon art, freezing cloud, the moment those words left his lips. He and his 6 clones swung their arms, releasing cold winds that could freeze our bodies. Since we were completely surrounded, there was nowhere to run. The fact that I made the battlefield an open ground no longer mattered with the clones present. The cold winds hit us like a blizzard, it was a blue smoke of chilling death. Our body temperature fell rapidly and each breath we took froze our lungs. We could not even see clearly anymore due to the blizzard, eyes felt like they were freezing up. Kane fell against my body, my arms moved to grab her and I immediately covered her mouth and nose. The demon's laughter echoed at that moment. It felt like I could hear it, deep in my mind. Was it the delusion of a dying man? I was not sure. It was cold. Too cold to even form thoughts. I guess this is how I die, unable to even save one girl, the same part of my mind said. Yet, there was also something else. Something in me was protesting with everything, it hated the demons and the situation to the very core. 9 years ago, I was helpless. And now, I was helpless once more. Was all my effort for useless? Was winning against the demons reserved for the main character alone? The frustration in my heart was enough to overshadow the cold air. I hate it, 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 I hate it. I hate it more than anything else. I hate it even more than I loved myself. Suddenly, I felt my body temperature increase rapidly and my heart came alive like an engine in my chest. It felt like it was expanding the size of my chest cavity with how wildly it was beating. I felt a surge of strength and energy throughout my body, it turned all my previous injuries and limits into an illusion. I felt stronger than I ever felt before. My eyes started glowing and I could finally see past the blizzard again. I locked eyes with Doma and I knew what was going on. I did not even have to look at myself to notice a mark appearing on my face. Fuck. Was this the only way to win? I did not want this. But what other choice did I have when I was pushed to the brink of death? It was either this or dying now. So I accepted it. But with a promise that I would obliterate the creature that pushed me to such an extent. No. Not just him. I'll drive them to extinction. Kane. I called her name and hugged her close to my body. My eyes saw the effect of hypothermia and I started panicking. I started hating even more. How dare they try to take from me again? I wouldn't allow it to happen again even at the cost of my life. With the newfound strength and demon slayer mark, I could form coherent thoughts once more. And at that moment when I was at the edge of life and death, enlightenment came. It was when man is left with no other choice that he came up with the best innovations. Adapt. Fighting was a conversation. My skills are my words and language, it was impossible to run out of options. The things I knew and the techniques I have learned so far were all copied from others. The best thing I had done was combine them. But at that moment, I moved past that threshold. I did not copy, I did not simply combine. I started creating something completely new. Something that was not just a combination of the techniques I've learned, or should I say I was recreating it. Stone breathing. Water breathing. Thunder breathing. Flame breathing. Wind breathing, and even steroid breathing. I used the meanings and the concepts of each breathing styles to create something new. They were like words with different meanings, and I started constructing an entirely new sentence from them. I did not sply combine them. I broke them down to their most primitive state and built up the best version of them. And you know what? It fits like a puzzle. Somehow, the core concepts of all these breathing styles led to one beginning. Esoteric art. No. Sun breathing, it was the perfect beginning, the perfect language, and the ultimate truth. It did not matter who you were, where you were from, or when you lived. Across different identities, different continents, or different eras, the moment you reach perfection, you will find sun breathing. It did not matter how cold the air was anymore. My lungs sucked in the frigid air and I took a full breath. It did not hurt my lungs anymore, it did not freeze anymore, it felt fine. I could see fire coming from my mouth as I took in each breath. They were different from flame breathing, they were more intense and red. But even then, it was only a simple breath. I did not know enough to recreate the different forms of sun breathing. I only figured out the constant breathing of sun breathing. It was how Yorichi would have inhaled. But as the foundation of all breathing styles, the breath I inhaled supported every style of breathing I knew. As I mentioned before, each breathing style has unique patterns to the way you breathe. But sun breathing could apply to all of them. I carried Kane in my arms and using my right leg, I propelled myself forward. Thunderclap and flash. I blitzed past the ice clones and Doma. The demon's shocked face was the last image I saw. In just a few seconds, I was many meters away from the battlefield. But ultimately, I stopped. Running away at my condition was a foolish decision. I was too injured to run far and Doma would inevitably catch up to me. So the better option was to end this fight now while I still had energy. I gently laid Kane on the ground underneath a tree. Raven flew towards me and I told her to protect her. I took another second to look at her face. She was the reason I was fighting. My love for her was the reason I hate. Then I stood up, turned around, and ran towards Doma again. With my sword shining under the moon, I inhaled a huge breath using sun breathing. The pattern of the breath fits every technique I had. Storm breathing, second form, my body did not protest, instead, it roared with anticipation. At the cost of only living 25 years old, my body was able to achieve inhuman strength. I knew instinctively that I could use storm breathing as much as I wanted. Let me curse you. Lightning wave. I yelled and I blitzed towards Doma's the fastest speed I had moved yet. For a moment I let my body forget its injured state and fight with everything it had. Doma vs Seiji, final, third POV, this can't be human. That was the only line of thought Doma was able to fit between calm and disaster. One moment the human was walking towards him and then he turned into a violent storm in the same stretch of moment. The ground shook due to the sheer force exploding on it. The air quivered and fled as the human storm incarnate obliterated everything in an instant. I didn't see it. It was a scary thought for the upper moon too. With the strength he now possessed, no entity should be able to move faster than he could see. Not Kokushibo, and not even Muzan Kibutsuji. It was impossible. Boom. And so, with his entire body other than his head completely obliterated, Doma stared at the aftermath of the impossible. Purple lighting raised the ground and flashed in a brilliant light that stunted the world. A violent wind ravaged the atmosphere, turning every molecule of air into a deadly blade. Doma was not even able to witness how his ice clones were reduced to ice dust. It happened too fast. Yet all that violence and all that super speed were guided by perfect accuracy. They were stitched together by a wave, a flow of water. Doma deduced that from the afterimage left by the human. No, he was no longer just a human to Doma. A Hashira. For the first time in his long life, Doma felt the weight of the title Hashira. He knew now that he was facing against the pillar of humanity. Finally, sound returned to the battlefield after seemingly gathering enough courage. The shock waves that erupted from shattering sound barriers completely ripped the topmost layer of the ground, exposing deeper earth. Thud. Doma, currently only a head, fell to the ground with a thud. His head fell in the perfect position to stare at the back of the Hashira. His eyes told him that the enemy was only a human who was broken beyond belief. From all of the injuries Doma saw on the man, he should have fallen with a single touch. The enemy was weak and fragile, already past his breaking point. Yet Doma's heart saw a different entity. His heart saw a fellow monster who had the capacity to end him, an equal. There was also a certain feeling in his heart which he could not describe. But that feeling stood out for Doma, who usually never felt a tinge of emotion. What is it? He wondered. The feeling only intensified when the Hashira turned his head, eyes glowing purple, somehow looking even more demonic than his. It froze him for a moment. Speaking of heart, he should regenerate quickly. It was not fitting for someone like him to remain only a head. Being beheaded was fatal to most demons, but for the top 3 of the upper moon, it was no longer enough to kill them. Doma unleashed his full potential and rapidly reconstructed his body in all its majestic glory from only a head. The Hashira simply watched while Doma fully regenerated. Ah, thank you for waiting, Doma said with a playful smile, unfitting of the situation. Stop doing that, a cold robotic voice came from the Hashira. Doma hated the way he talked, some words had the wrong pitch and tone. It sounded like an AI voice, an imitation. Doing what? Stop acting like you have emotions, the Hashira said, and his piercing eyes focused on Doma. You feel nothing, you are no different than the ice dolls you create. With the help of his purple eyes, he was able to see how Doma was imitating playful emotions even though he never really felt a thing. Doma was born apathetic. Ever since his birth, he had never experienced proper emotions. The best he could do was imagine the emotions and imitate what he had seen. The next emotion I should feel is anger, right? He is hitting a sore spot after all. Doma thought to himself. He had become immaculate in acting emotions after centuries of studies. But weirdly enough, he did not feel like faking anger. There was this burning sensation in his heart which was the very first time Doma was feeling anything. You living dead, you should have never existed, the Hashira spat out with a thick amount of hate in his awkward voice. I'll fix that. Doma talked no more and started using his blood demon art. The feeling in his heart increased when he saw the enemy get into a stance. He was not sure, but he suspected it was an emotion. He thinks it's excitement. Blood demon art. The temperature in the air plummeted and the white smoke of frosty ice overwhelmed the surroundings. The world became numbing cold, and on a summer night, winter came. Rhyme, water lily bodhisattva, a gigantic icy Buddha materialized amidst the frigid air. The space around the statue seemed to distort due to the depressive cold. The winds were still, frozen at the moment as the Buddha was erected to its full glory. From the mouth of the Buddha came chilling white clouds that froze everything in its path. Spinning lotuses with sharp vines also came to life around the Buddha, and they towered over the human. The Hashira watched all of it happen from a distance. Each breath he took released smoke in the Arctic air, yet he remained unharmed. He was like an undying flame, with the heat of a star in his lungs. His purple eyes pierced right through the frozen air. Doma grabbed the space in front of him and the Buddha followed his action. Then he took the action of tearing down space. The Buddha followed. The icy statue of a god, standing almost 10 meters tall, came crashing towards the human with the weight of a mountain. The lotuses spun forward at incredible speed, aiming to rip him apart. In return, the Hashira only observed him with eyes colder than ice. Its calculating depth gave a terrifying chill to anyone who gazed upon them. At that moment, he created a new breathing style to perfectly counter against Doma. It was the same thing he had done for sun breathing. The ice Buddha would require incredible raw strength to destroy, so he took that aspect from stone breathing. The chilling clouds from the Buddha's mouth demanded wind breathing to fight against them. And finally, he took the intensity of flame breathing to fight against the frigid temperature. These three styles were broken apart and rebuilt to create a new breathing style. Volcanic breathing, first form, said the human before moving straight towards the giant Buddha. He leapt in the air, higher than the ice Buddha. The lotuses spun and changed trajectory to follow him, but he paid them no heed. He brought his long sword high above his head, and you could see an intense red cover his body and sword. Molten divide, under the stunned eyes of Doma, the ice Buddha instantly split into two, and the shockwave from the slash destroyed every individual lotus coming his way. That was not the end. Soon after, the earth split into two. Boom. It was a ground-splitting attack with the intensity of an erupting volcano. The ground quaked as if the tectonic plates had shifted. Then an overwhelming wave of pressure crushed the vicinity mercilessly. It was not only an attack that equaled the ice Buddha. It was an attack carefully crafted by someone to counter Doma's attack perfectly. The upper moon never stood a chance. The aftermath of the clash was a scene of broken ice and scarred earth. There was an oppressive silence in the air that seemed to choke Doma. The emotion in his heart increased. Blood demon art, crystalline divine child, Doma immediately continued the battle. Something inside was urging him to attack even more intensely. He created miniature clones of himself once more, and they attacked the Hashira all at once. But this time, it was no longer effective. The Hashira was way faster than the clones, so they were never able to surround him to take advantage of his blind spot. He moved from one place to another as they blurred around the battlefield and the village. The exchange went on for quite some time. The sound of ice clashing and breaking against steel filled the village. The houses in the village were destroyed in loud destructive explosions. A calamity had struck the settlement. After this battle, the village would not be habitable anymore. But through all this, Doma could not process anything anymore. It was all a blur of information. He remembered creating more ice clones every time they were destroyed. But he remained in his place, aware of the battle yet not joining for some reason. There was something choking him from the inside. It stopped him from moving an inch towards the human. How odd, how very odd. Then in a loud ear-splitting explosion, the Hashira destroyed all 6 clones at once. He raised a path through the village and immediately reached Doma. "Let's end this now," he said. The imperfection of his speech still remained. Doma remained in his place. He did not even try to make clones anymore since they were ineffective. With every intention of ending the battle himself, they stood opposite to each other. Blood demon art, Doma readied his spell. In return, the Hashira said. Esoteric art, water breathing, 11th form, water surged out from the Hashira and covered the entire surrounding. Doma felt like he was pulled into another dimension as he found himself in the middle of a raging ocean. But even after a while, the water never calmed down. Instead, the waves became more and more violent. Living's malice, right then, killing intent floods out like a raging tsunami. The intent of the malice and hatred was so strong that it transcended the psychic plane and manifested itself to the world. Not only could Doma feel it, but he could experience his death multiple times. It froze him in his spot. The burning feeling in his heart, the emotion he felt finally became known at that moment. Since he never felt emotions before, he did not know what it was, but now, he realized. It was not excitement. It was fear. He was afraid. Doma could not move at all. Every second he experienced his own death. The killing intent was so strong that even the breeze upon his skin felt like a deadly attack, and he was completely stunned. He was scared. He knew he should not be scared of the blowing wind or the sound of crickets, but like a child with an irrational fear of ghosts, he trembled. Therefore, he never even saw the real attack coming. When everything felt like they were trying to kill him, the real attack that was made to kill him was completely hidden. This technique was the complete opposite of Ju's dead calm and his selfless state, yet they accomplished the same task. Instead of erasing one's presence by eliminating all hatred and intention, this technique amplified it. The killing intent and the hatred of the user were so powerful that they completely corrupted the surroundings. Like Conqueror's haki, the intent materialized on the world and the victim felt like everything in the world was out to harm them. So they could never see the real attack coming. They could not differentiate between a blowing wind and the slashing of a sword. Even without his knowledge, Doma's head was chopped off. His body fell to the ground and his bisected head soon followed. Doma was too stunned to even react. His eyes were wide, too overwhelmed by the emotion in his heart. In the following second, his head started turning into ash. He could have regenerated, an upper moon like him would not die by simply beheading. And yet he was dying. Why? It was because he dared not regenerate when those eyes were looking down at him. Being erased seemed to be the better alternative than continuing the battle. And so, Doma died not because of any blade or attack but because he didn't do anything. He was too overwhelmed by the first and the last emotion he ever felt in his long existence. Fear. Author, sorry, I had to rewrite this chapter because I killed Doma in a very dumb way. In all honesty, Seiji had no way of killing Doma other than waiting for sunrise. Remember, it took wisteria poison 400 times stronger the amount to kill normal demons to bring down Doma. I don't see anything other than sun breathing that can kill Doma. It felt off at first, how Seiji killed Doma. But I rewrote the chapter and this time, in Doma's perspective, to mention that he died not because he was killed, but literally because he was too afraid to heal. He killed himself basically. And this became realistic when we learned that Doma could not feel emotion, so he did not know how else to react to the first emotion he felt, which was fear. So, that's how you kill Upper Moon too, I guess. Also, kudos to the reader whom I did not remember. He said something about selfish state, which would be the opposite FO selfless state under the chapter that said Seiji could never enter selfless state. I took his advice and created Living's Malice, absolutely opposite of Dead Calm LOL. So, that's the end of the Doma arc. I hope I cooked up an acceptable product. Thanks for reading and supporting me.